I hung up the phone and slammed my fist against the mahogany desk, the vibration sending ripples through my whiskey. 6:32 in the evening, and another piece of evidence had just fallen into place. I stood up and walked to the panoramic window of my office, gazing out at the meticulously landscaped garden where Jasmine and I had once planned our future. Now I was planning something entirely different. The golden hour light cast long shadows across the lawn, not unlike the shadows of doubt that had been growing in my mind these past months. I took a slow sip of 18-year-old Macallan, letting the burn in my throat match the one in my chest. Marriage is about trust, my father had said at our wedding. The old steelworker had been skeptical of Jasmine from the beginning. Just make sure she loves you, not what you've built. 8 years later, his warning echoed in my mind as I reviewed the mental catalog of suspicious events. Whispered late-night phone calls, the scent of unfamiliar cologne, and most damning of all, the missing confidential documents from my home office. 2 months ago, I'd noticed the slight misalignment of papers in my locked drawer. Locked, but not to someone who shared my home. The files detailed the upcoming Silverstone merger, information worth millions to the right people. I hadn't confronted Jasmine then. In business and in war, the element of surprise is invaluable. My phone vibrated. Jasmine's text, working late at the foundation. Don't wait up. The Montgomery Foundation, my tax-efficient charity that built children's hospitals and apparently funded whatever else my wife deemed necessary. The foundation had been her idea. I remembered her at that charity auction 8 years ago, her eyes bright with ambition and what I thought was idealism. She'd been passionate about helping children and I'd been passionate about her. The perfect partnership, I'd thought. You've built an empire, she'd said on our first date. But what's your legacy? I smiled bitterly at the memory. I'd built that legacy for us both, never suspecting she was constructing her own exit strategy. The discreet vibration of my secure line interrupted my thoughts. I answered immediately. Mr. Montgomery. Fabian Campbell's voice was cool and professional. We'd maintained this facade since he left the FBI to head my security team. Only a handful of people knew the extent of our actual relationship. Fabian. Go ahead. The surveillance equipment is ready for installation. We can proceed whenever the residence is vacant. I checked my watch. 6:45. She'll be gone for at least 3 hours. Do it now. Understood. Full coverage as discussed. I walked back to the window watching as the gardener, actually one of Fabian's men, clipped hedges with studied precision. Everything. Bedroom, office, phones, her car. I want to know what she says, who she meets, what she's planning. Sir, I should remind you of the legal implications. This is my house, Fabian. My voice hardened. And something is happening under my roof. Pause. Understood. We'll be discreet. I ended the call and opened the hidden panel behind my bookshelf, revealing a small safe even Jasmine didn't know existed. Inside lay the original copy of our prenuptial agreement, several offshore account details, and an old photograph of my parents standing outside our small apartment in Pittsburgh. They'd worked their entire lives and had nothing to show for it. I'd promised myself a different fate. The memory of my childhood, the constant struggle, the hunger, the humiliation, hardened my resolve. I hadn't built Montgomery Enterprises from nothing, hadn't become one of the most successful strategists in the business world, to be betrayed by someone I trusted. I closed the safe and returned to my desk, pouring another finger of whiskey. Jasmine had made a critical error in her calculations. She saw the wealth, the power, the trappings of success. What she failed to understand was how I'd acquired them. I picked up the phone and dialed Fabian again. Sir? He answered on the first ring. There's something else. I paused, watching as the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon. I want to know who he is. He, sir? The man she's seeing. Find him. Learn everything. Consider it done. I hung up and raised my glass to my reflection in the darkening window. In chess, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board, but the game isn't over until the king falls. And I had no intention of falling. 2 weeks after installing the surveillance equipment, I stood by the panoramic window in my office, watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. The weather seemed appropriate for what I was about to hear. It's ready, sir. Fabian handed me a small tablet. His expression remained neutral, but there was something in his eyes, pity perhaps, that made my stomach tighten. Leave me. I waited until the door clicked shut before pressing play. Jasmine's voice filled the room, intimate and conspiratorial in a way it hadn't been with me for years. Justin, darling, we need to be careful. Vernon's been asking questions about the foundation. A man's voice, smooth and younger sounding than mine. He doesn't suspect anything. You said he's completely absorbed with the Silverstone deal. He is, but... Pause. You don't know him like I do. His mind works differently. He sees patterns where others see coincidence. I took a slow breath, the confirmation of my suspicions bringing not satisfaction but a cold, crystalline clarity. My hands didn't shake as I poured myself a drink. 8 years of marriage culminating in this moment. What about the Seattle house? Justin asked. I've spoken with the agent. It's perfect, right on the water, private, everything we talked about. I raised an eyebrow. We own property in Seattle, but Jasmine was clearly discussing something new, something hidden from me. And the money? Justin's voice held an edge of anxiety. Jasmine laughed softly. Relax. According to our prenup, I'm entitled to half of everything. Once we file the papers, Vernon will be too concerned with saving his precious company to fight over assets. But the prenup is full of loopholes my lawyers have already identified. Besides, I've been moving funds gradually. The foundation has been useful. Their casual discussion of stealing my money meant for children's hospitals, should have infuriated me. Instead, it crystallized my resolve. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a strategic attack and I would respond accordingly. God, I can't wait to be done with this, Jasmine sighed. 8 years of mind-numbing business dinners, pretending to care about market fluctuations and quarterly projections. It's almost over, Justin reassured her. A few more months of playing the devoted wife, then freedom, and enough money to last several lifetimes. He's almost at 9 figures now, you know? The pride in her voice was perverse, as if my success were a prize she'd won rather than something she'd planned to steal. The lawyers think we can get at least $40 million in the settlement, maybe more. I paused the recording, needing a moment to process the calculated nature of it all. The foundation. The secret house. The lawyers she'd already consulted. How long had this been in motion? The soft knock at my door broke my reverie. I closed the tablet as Jasmine entered without waiting for my response. There you are. She smiled, radiant in a blue dress I'd bought her for her birthday. I've been looking everywhere. I studied her face, the same face I'd woken up beside for 8 years, searching for signs of the stranger revealed in the recordings. She was beautiful still. That hadn't changed. But now I saw the calculation behind her eyes, the slight tension in her smile. Just reviewing some numbers for the Silverstone deal. I gestured vaguely at my desk, my voice steady. Years of high-stakes negotiations had taught me to conceal my thoughts. There are some concerns about their valuation. Oh. She perched on the edge of my desk, crossing her legs. Anything serious? Potentially. We're still working through it. I watched her carefully. The projections might have been manipulated. A flicker of something, concern, calculation, crossed her face before she regained her composure. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You always do. She stood and straightened my tie in a gesture that once felt intimate but now seemed performative. I was thinking, maybe we should get away for a bit. Seattle, perhaps? We haven't used the lake house in ages. Seattle. I maintained my neutral expression with effort. That might be nice. Let me see how things develop with Silverstone first. Of course. She kissed my cheek, lingering just long enough to be convincing. Don't work too late. After she left, I replayed the recording, listening more carefully for nuances I might have missed. Then I called Fabian. I need everything on a Justin. No last name yet, but he's younger, probably attractive, possibly a personal trainer or similar given their comments about his physique. I kept my voice low, though I knew Jasmine was already downstairs. Check her gym, social appointments, anywhere she might have met him. Already on it. And sir? We found evidence of a safety deposit box at Grand Horizon Bank, registered under her maiden name. The pieces were falling into place, a parallel life constructed alongside our marriage, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Good work. Begin phase 2. We have absolute proof now. I hung up and turned back to the window. The storm had arrived, rain lashing against the glass like the thoughts racing through my mind. I didn't feel sorrow or rage, only cold determination. In business, I'd always lived by one principle. Never strike until you hold all the cards. Jasmine had made her move. Now I would make mine. The private dining room at La Tabou Royale was silent except for the occasional clink of silverware as the staff prepared for the day. The restaurant wouldn't open for another 3 hours, but the owner owed me a favor, one of many I'd collected over the years. She's been busy, Fabian said, spreading photographs across the white tablecloth. 17 meetings with this man in the past month. I studied the images of Jasmine with a tall, athletic man in his mid-30s. His carefully styled hair and designer workout clothes screamed personal trainer, but the watch on his wrist, a Patek Philippe worth at least 60,000, told a different story. Justin Redcliffe, Fabian continued, opening a dossier. 35 years old. Works at Elysium Fitness Club, where, coincidentally, Jasmine has been a member for 3 years. I picked up a photo of them leaving a hotel at separate times, 15 minutes apart. The timestamp read 3:14 in the afternoon, during what Jasmine had claimed was a foundation meeting. His background? I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the tightness in my chest. Interesting pattern. Fabian slid over another document. 3 failed businesses in 7 years, each initially funded by a wealthy older woman. He leaves a trail of debt and broken promises. And hearts, presumably. Indeed. But this is the most concerning part. He pointed to a financial report. He owes over $200,000 to some very dangerous people in Las Vegas. The kind who don't send polite reminder letters when payments are late. I nodded, absorbing this information. So he's desperate. And Jasmine is his lottery ticket. Precisely. But there's more. Fabian handed me another photograph, Justin with an older woman, both in tennis attire. Millie Wesson, 52. Recently divorced from real estate developer Alan Wesson. Settlement estimated at $12 million. Let me guess, Justin was her trainer too? Among other things, according to our sources. I leaned back, the pieces fitting together with cold precision. What about the safety deposit box? Registered 3 years ago. Our sources at the bank couldn't legally tell us the contents, but the box is accessed approximately once a month. And the foundation? Fabian's expression darkened. We've identified several questionable transfers. Funds earmarked for the new pediatric wing at St. Clair's were diverted to offshore accounts, then broken up and redistributed. How much? Just over $1.8 million in the past 18 months. We're still tracking where it all ended up, but some of it appears to have funded jewelry purchases that Jasmine then sold for cash. The betrayal was even more extensive than I'd imagined. Not just our marriage, but the foundation, children's hospitals, looted to fund her escape plan. I want a complete audit, I said, my voice hardening. Every dollar, every transaction. And I want it done quietly. Already underway. I've engaged Moreno's team through 3 cutouts. No connection to you. I nodded, appreciating Fabian's thoroughness. This was why I'd hired him after he left the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. His attention to detail matched my own. What about their communications? Encrypted messaging apps mostly. But we've captured enough from the home surveillance. They're planning to move within 6 months, after the Silverstone deal closes. 6 months. The timeline aligned with the merger that would potentially double Montgomery Enterprises' market cap, and consequently what Jasmine could claim in a divorce. Show me the surveillance photos again. Fabian slid over an envelope containing images of Jasmine and Justin at various locations. A secluded table at Le Jardin Secret, a boutique hotel downtown, a lakeside property that must be the Seattle house they discussed. In each photo, Jasmine looked animated, alive, a version of my wife I hadn't seen in years. The realization stung more than I cared to admit. Activate the backup accounts, I instructed, pushing the photos away. The ones not even my financial advisors know about. Already done. The contingency plan is in motion. I stood and walked to the window, watching early morning joggers pass by, oblivious to the storm brewing inside these walls. Betrayal is an inevitable truth, Fabian. In business, in marriage, the only variable is when, not if. Rather cynical view, sir. Experience, not cynicism. I turned back to him. The irony is that she sees the trappings of wealth but doesn't understand the mindset required to create it. Strategic thinking, contingency planning, patience, these are the tools that built my fortune. And now they'll protect it, Fabian observed. Precisely. I gathered the files, careful to leave no trace of our meeting. Continue the surveillance. I want to know every move they make, every person they speak with. Build me a case so airtight that when I make my move, there will be no escape. As we prepared to leave separately, Fabian handed me one final photograph. Jasmine and Justin at an intimate dinner, her hand caressing his face, both laughing. When did you suspect? He asked quietly. I studied the image, remembering the moment 8 years ago when I'd first seen Jasmine across a crowded charity gala, calculating even then in ways I hadn't recognized. The moment she said, "I do," perhaps. But I didn't want to see it. I slipped the photo into my pocket. That's the last mistake I'll make where she's concerned. A soft knock interrupted my concentration as I reviewed the latest surveillance reports. It was nearly midnight, and I hadn't expected anyone else to be awake in the house. "Come in," I called, quickly sliding the folders into my desk drawer. Nara, our housekeeper of 6 years, entered hesitantly. Her usually calm face bore an expression of concern that immediately put me on alert. "I'm sorry to disturb you so late, Mr. Montgomery," she said, her Filipino accent more pronounced with her evident nervousness. "But there is something I think you should know." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Please sit. What's troubling you?" Nara perched on the edge of the seat, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Mrs. Montgomery asked me to pack some items tomorrow. Her grandmother's necklace, some files from the safe, and several designer bags." She paused, clearly uncomfortable. "She said it was for storage, but—" Her loyalty was touching. Nara had been with us since before the house was even finished, and I'd always ensured she was well compensated, not just financially but with respect for her work and her intelligence. "But you found it strange?" I finished for her. She nodded. "Yes, sir. Especially since she asked me not to mention it to you." Her eyes met mine, steady now. "I don't like secrets, Mr. Montgomery. Not in a home where I work." I leaned back, calculating. This development was unexpected but potentially useful. "Thank you for telling me, Nara. I appreciate your honesty." I made a decision. "Pack the items as she asked. But I'd prefer you keep our conversation between us." After she left, I called Fabian despite the late hour. "She's accelerating her timeline," I told him when he answered. "Have your team found anything new in the house?" "Actually, yes." Fabian sounded alert despite the hour. 3 professional-grade listening devices. 1 in your office, 1 in the master bedroom, and 1 in the kitchen. I absorbed this with grim amusement. Jasmine had been spying on me while I spied on her, a layer of deception I hadn't anticipated. "Leave them in place," I decided. "We can use them." "Sir?" "If she's listening, let's give her something to hear. False information, concerns about the company's stability. We'll control the narrative." "Understood. There's something else." Justin made a call to a real estate agent in Seattle today, inquiring about a luxury waterfront property. He mentioned needing to close quickly. I processed this information, the pieces continuing to align. "And Jasmine?" "She contacted her financial advisor about liquidating her personal investments. Not the joint accounts, just the ones in her name." "How much are we talking about?" "Approximately $2 million. Not insignificant, but a fraction of what she stands to gain from a divorce settlement." I tapped my fingers on the desk thoughtfully. She's creating a safety net, preparing for all contingencies. Despite everything, I couldn't help but admire her thoroughness. What about her legal consultations? Our cyber team intercepted messages to and from Penelope Harris's office yesterday. "Harris is?" "I know who she is." Penelope Harris was the most feared divorce attorney in the state, known for securing brutal settlements against wealthy husbands. "Activate Black Protocol." There was a pause on the line. "Sir, are you certain?" "Once initiated." "I'm certain. Call Alex Chong too. I want his eyes on this before we proceed." "Understood. I'll have everything in motion by morning." After hanging up, I walked to the window, gazing out at the moonlit garden. The estate had been my dream, our dream I'd thought at the time. A symbol of how far I'd come from the Pittsburgh slums where I'd grown up watching my father work himself to death in the steel mills for pennies. I'd learned early that the world belonged to those who took control of their circumstances. When my first business partner betrayed me 15 years ago, I'd nearly lost everything. The lesson had been painful but invaluable. Trust but verify. Always have contingency plans. And never, ever show your full hand until the game is won. The sound of the front door opening drew my attention. Jasmine entering, cheeks flushed from what she would undoubtedly call an intensive workout. I watched her from the balcony as she set down her gym bag and checked her reflection in the hall mirror. Even now, knowing what I knew, I could appreciate her beauty and the calculated precision of her deception. She looked up, spotting me. "Vernon, you startled me. Why are you standing in the dark?" "Just thinking." I descended the stairs slowly, studying her face for the micro-expressions I'd been trained to recognize. A slight tightening around the eyes, anxiety. A momentary twitch at the corner of her mouth, deception. "How was your training session?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Exhausting." She brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Justin is relentless." "Justin?" "My trainer." A flash of wariness crossed her face. I've mentioned him before. Of course, I smiled, touching her cheek gently. You seem flushed. Perhaps a cool shower before bed? She relaxed slightly, believing the deception successful. Good idea. Don't stay up too late with work. As she climbed the stairs, I returned to my office, already mapping out the next 6 months in my mind. I would need to be methodical, gathering evidence while systematically dismantling her plans. The key would be timing, allowing her to incriminate herself fully before I revealed my hand. I opened my laptop and began drafting emails to my most trusted advisors. By morning, Operation Checkmate would be fully operational. Jasmine had made her move. Now I would make mine. 3 months after discovering Jasmine's betrayal, I sat in my home office with Donovan McDonald, my CFO and one of the few people I trusted implicitly. We spoke with deliberate volume, every word carefully scripted for the listening devices Jasmine had planted. The Silverstone projections are concerning, Donovan said, his Scottish accent thickening as it always did when he played his part in our corporate theater. Their debt-to-equity ratio is far worse than they disclosed during initial negotiations. I spread papers across my desk, each stamped with bold red confidential markers, visible to anyone who might be watching through the partially open door. If these hidden liabilities hit our books, I responded, running a hand through my hair in a practiced gesture of stress, we're looking at a 30% devaluation. Maybe more. Donovan shook his head gravely. The board will panic. The market will react even worse. I heard the soft footsteps in the hallway before Jasmine appeared at the doorway, her expression a masterpiece of concerned innocence. Darling, I hate to interrupt, but... She paused, taking in the scene of apparent corporate crisis. Is everything all right? You both look worried. I exchanged a glance with Donovan before sighing heavily. Just some unexpected complications with Silverstone. Nothing for you to worry about. Anything I can do? She entered the room, her hand resting gently on my shoulder, a gesture that once brought comfort but now felt like the touch of a stranger. No, we're just running scenarios. I covered one of the documents with another as if hiding the worst news. Donovan and I have contingency plans. Her eyes flickered to the papers, exactly as I'd anticipated. Those projections look serious. Perhaps I should cancel our dinner reservations for tonight? That might be best, I agreed, adding carefully, though there might be some good news soon. My contacts in the East are still interested in a significant investment, regardless of Silverstone. I watched her eyes widen slightly, the bait taken. Eastern investors? You never mentioned them before. It's been confidential. Very preliminary, I shrugged, the picture of a husband too preoccupied with business to notice his wife's betrayal. But if they come through, it changes everything. That's wonderful news, she said, the calculation almost visible behind her eyes. I'll let you get back to your meeting then. After she left, Donovan and I continued our performance, discussing restructuring options and partial asset liquidation, loud enough for the hidden microphones. When we were certain she was out of earshot, we switched to passing written notes. Convincing? I wrote. Donovan nodded, writing back, Oscar-worthy. Your wife certainly seemed interested in the Eastern investors. An hour later, Fabian called with the expected update. Your wife made 3 calls immediately after leaving your office, he reported. 1 to Justin, 2 to her attorney. And? She used the phrase sinking ship twice. She's accelerating her timeline, suggesting they move on the divorce filing within 30 days instead of waiting for the Silverstone deal to close. I smiled, the plan unfolding exactly as predicted. And Justin? Nervous. He tried to list the Seattle condominiums twice this week. No takers at his inflated asking price. Fabian paused. And it seems his Vegas problems are catching up to him. Our sources say his creditors are growing impatient. Perfect. I checked my calendar. Schedule 3 more investor meetings this week. Make sure they look legitimate enough to pass casual scrutiny but concerning enough to feed her narrative. Already arranged. And I've begun seeding controlled rumors on financial blogs about Montgomery Enterprises facing unexpected challenges. After ending the call, I pulled up the real Silverstone financials on my secure tablet. The merger was proceeding flawlessly, with projected returns even higher than our initial estimates. The company's value would likely increase by 40% when announced, an announcement timed to coincide perfectly with the culmination of my plan for Jasmine. I dialed another number, one not listed in any of my contacts. Alex, I said when the call connected. I need your assessment of our strategy. Legally speaking. Alex Chong, my inside source at the Securities Commission, had been reviewing my plan for weeks, ensuring every move remained within legal boundaries despite their deceptive intent. Everything checks out, he confirmed. As long as all official filings and statements remain accurate, you're creating a perception, not committing fraud. The temporary stock fluctuations are within normal market behavior. And the foundation audit? Proceeding quietly. The evidence is substantial. His voice turned serious. Vernon, when this breaks, it won't just end her divorce plans. We're talking criminal charges. I considered this, remembering the money diverted from children's hospitals to fund her escape. She made her choice, Alex. Several choices, in fact. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. The investor didn't look happy when he left. Everything okay? I smiled at her transparent attempt at intelligence gathering. The fictitious investor, actually Fabian's associate, had indeed left looking grim, exactly as instructed. Just business, I texted back. Some complications. Nothing I can't handle. Setting down my phone, I walked to the window. In the reflection of the glass, I could see not just my own face, but the ghost of that boy from Pittsburgh who had vowed never to be betrayed, never to be vulnerable. That boy had grown into a man who understood that the best revenge wasn't served hot or cold. It was served calculated, precise, and utterly devastating. The dining room gleamed in the soft light of a dozen candles. I had arranged everything myself. The fine china we'd received as a wedding gift, crystal glasses that caught and fractured the light, and a bottle of Bordeaux from 1982, the same vintage we'd shared on our honeymoon in France. The chef I'd hired for the evening placed 2 perfectly cooked filet mignon steaks on our plates before discreetly withdrawing. It was supposedly my favorite meal, though Jasmine had never noticed that I rarely ordered steak when we dined out. A small detail in a marriage built on overlooked truths. She entered wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, her hair swept up to reveal the diamond earrings I'd given her for our 5th anniversary, earrings she'd apparently decided not to sell yet. "This is unexpected," she said, genuine surprise in her voice as she took in the romantic setting. I pulled out her chair. "I thought we could use a night away from the stress. Just the 2 of us." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "That sounds perfect." I poured the wine, watching the deep red liquid swirl in her glass. "Do you remember this wine?" She hesitated for just a heartbeat too long. "Of course. Our honeymoon." "The small vineyard outside Bordeaux," I prompted. "The owner insisted we try his best vintage." "It was a magical day," she agreed, recovering quickly. "You charmed him into giving us a private tour of the cellars." I raised my glass. "To simpler times." We ate in a strange simulacrum of companionship, discussing neutral topics. A gallery opening she'd attended, a book I'd been reading. On the surface, we were a successful couple enjoying an intimate dinner. Only I knew this was the final act of our marriage. "How are things with Silverstone?" she eventually asked, unable to resist probing for information. "Any progress with those Eastern investors you mentioned?" I wiped my mouth with a napkin, setting the stage for what would come next. There are always complications in business. But I've faced worse. "You've built this company from nothing," she said, reaching across to touch my hand in apparent support. "One bad meeting doesn't define you." The irony of her false encouragement nearly made me laugh. Instead, I met her eyes. "You know what I've always admired about you, Jasmine? Your dedication to the foundation. The hours you've put in, the passion you've shown." Her face softened with what appeared to be genuine emotion. "It means a lot to hear you say that. I've worked hard to make it successful." "I know." I reached into my jacket and removed a manila envelope. "That's why this was so disappointing." Her expression froze as I placed the envelope on the table between us. "What is that?" "An audit of the Montgomery Foundation. Specifically, transfers authorized over the past 18 months. I opened the envelope, removing several pages of financial records. It seems significant sums intended for children's hospitals found their way to private accounts instead. Color drained from her face. "I've invested years in that foundation." "Yes, you have," I agreed calmly. "Though perhaps, invested, isn't quite the right word. Exploited might be more accurate." She pushed her plate away, appetite forgotten. "If there are discrepancies, I'm sure there's an explanation. Perhaps the accounting." "How's your trainer, by the way?" I interrupted, my voice deceptively casual. "Justin, isn't it?" Her eyes widened. I continued before she could respond. "I understand real estate in Seattle is quite competitive these days. Waterfront properties especially." She stood abruptly, her napkin falling to the floor. You've been spying on me. Consider it due diligence, I replied, remaining seated. A necessary precaution when one's wife is plotting with her lover to steal half a lifetime's work. You don't understand? I understand perfectly. I retrieved another envelope from my jacket, this one filled with surveillance photographs. Hotel meetings. Restaurant dates. At least you were consistent in your deception. I spread the photos across the table, 5 months of evidence meticulously gathered. Her face in various settings, always animated, always intimate with the man she'd chosen over me. Did he tell you about his gambling debts? I asked conversationally. The $200,000 he owes to some particularly unpleasant individuals in Las Vegas? Her hands trembled as she picked up one of the photos. How long have you known? Long enough. And thoroughly enough. I sipped my wine, allowing the moment to stretch between us. Long enough to ensure that when you filed for divorce, you'd find yourself with far less than you'd planned. You bastard, she whispered, but there was fear beneath her anger. I'm simply protecting what's mine, I corrected her. Something your boyfriend should have considered before targeting a man who built an empire by anticipating threats. She grabbed her purse and backed away from the table. This isn't over. On the contrary, I smiled coldly. It's been over for some time. You just didn't know it yet. After she fled upstairs, I called Fabian. She's on the move. I think she's heading to Justin. We're tracking her, he confirmed. What triggered this? I showed her the foundation audit and the surveillance photos. I swirled the remaining wine in my glass, remembering how it had all begun. Strange phone calls in the night, whispered conversations that ended when I entered a room. It was the phone calls that first made me suspicious, you know. Always at odd hours, always private. She's leaving the property now, Fabian reported. And sir? Justin's creditors have escalated their collection efforts. They've learned about his potential windfall and are applying pressure. I set down my glass, savoring the perfect convergence of my plan. Keep me updated on their movements. It's time for the next phase. As I extinguished the candles one by one, I recalled my father's words at our wedding. The old steelworker had seen through Jasmine's charm to the calculation beneath. Gold diggers come with pretty smiles, he'd warned, but they'll get you like fish if you let them. I hadn't listened then, but I was listening now. A week after my confrontation with Jasmine, I sat at the head of a mahogany table in our private conference room, facing the concerned expressions of my board of directors. The tension in the room was palpable, like a tightly wound spring about to snap. Gilbert Temple, the board chairman, didn't bother with pleasantries. Vernon, we've lost a third of our market value in the past few months. Shareholders are panicking. We need answers. I nodded solemnly, letting the gravity of the situation hang in the air before responding. I understand your concerns. But I need your absolute trust for just a little longer. Elena Vasquez, our newest board member, leaned forward. Trust requires transparency, Vernon. The rumors about Silverstone are part of a carefully orchestrated plan, I interjected, my voice calm but firm. One that has been fully vetted by our legal team and coordinated with the Securities Commission. This wasn't entirely true. Only Alex Chang knew the full extent of my strategy, but it wasn't precisely a lie either. Every public filing remained factually accurate, despite the carefully crafted perception of instability. You're asking us to remain silent while our stock plummets? Gilbert's face reddened. That's an unreasonable request. I was about to respond when my phone vibrated with a message from Fabian. Justin Redcliffe admitted to St. Mary's Hospital. Apparent beating by creditors. Condition stable. I kept my expression neutral as I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Perfect timing. There are complications I haven't fully disclosed, I admitted, allowing a calculated note of weariness to enter my voice. The foundation audit uncovered some troubling irregularities. Money intended for charitable purposes has been diverted. A shocked silence fell over the room. How much? Asked Richard Kohler, our financial director. Nearly $2 million over the past 18 months. I pushed a folder toward the center of the table. And there's evidence suggesting these discrepancies might be connected to our current situation. Gilbert's eyebrows shot up. Connected how? I can't elaborate fully yet, I replied, spreading my hands in a gesture of reluctant restraint. But I have reason to believe the company's recent challenges may be the result of coordinated actions by those with insider knowledge. I was planting seeds of doubt, not just about Jasmine but about the possibility of broader conspiracy. The board would be looking for potential leaks, suspicious of any unusual communication or behavior. Give me 1 month, I requested. 30 days to resolve the situation. If I haven't restored investor confidence by then, I'll tender my resignation. The dramatic offer had its intended effect. Even Gilbert looked taken aback. That won't be necessary, he said after a moment. But we expect weekly updates. And no more surprises. After the meeting adjourned, I stepped into my private office to call Fabian. What's the latest? Jasmine attempted to withdraw funds from 3 banks this morning. All denied. His voice carried the satisfaction of a plan coming together. She met with Justin at the Grand Hotel after visiting him at the hospital. He's nervous, keeps mentioning his creditor's visit and something about accelerating the timeline. And the foundation investigation? Moving quickly. We've arranged a confidential meeting with Detective Mercer from Financial Crimes. He's reviewing the evidence this afternoon. I was finalizing arrangements for that meeting when my office door burst open. Jasmine stormed in, her face contorted with fury. What have you done? She demanded. The accounts are frozen. I regarded her calmly from behind my desk. Anomalies in the foundation finances have attracted attention from the relevant authorities. Standard procedure in such cases. You orchestrated this, she hissed. You've been watching me, following me. How long have you known? Long enough. The secret meetings, the hidden funds, the lawyers you quietly retained. I kept my voice even, professional, as if discussing a routine business matter. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? She paced before my desk like a trapped animal. This is harassment. I'll file a restraining order. On what grounds? That I discovered your affair? That I uncovered financial irregularities in our charitable foundation? I raised an eyebrow. I think the courts might be more interested in where those missing funds ended up. You're trying to destroy me. No, Jasmine. I'm simply allowing you to experience the consequences of your own actions. I stood, buttoning my suit jacket. A concept you seem unfamiliar with. Her expression shifted, calculation replacing rage. I know things, Vernon. About your business practices. The Westridge deal, the offshore accounts, the regulatory shortcuts. It was a desperate bluff. I'd anticipated this move. By all means, share what you know with the authorities. I smiled thinly. While they're investigating your embezzlement from a children's charity. She flinched, realizing her leverage had evaporated. This isn't over, she said, echoing her words from our dinner confrontation. Actually, it is. I checked my watch. And by the way, do give my regards to Justin. I hear loan sharks from Vegas aren't fond of being ignored. The color drained from her face as she realized the full extent of my knowledge, and my reach. As she stormed out, I returned to the window overlooking the city I'd helped build. The board meeting had gone exactly as planned. The foundation investigation was proceeding on schedule. And Jasmine was finally beginning to understand she was trapped in a game whose rules I'd written long ago. In chess, the queen may be the most powerful piece, but she's ultimately expendable. The king, however, plays the long game. And I'd been playing this one for months. The morning light filtered through the blinds of my private study as I reviewed the final details of my strategy with my legal team and Alex Chong. After months of preparation, we were approaching the endgame. The offshore accounts were a clever touch, Sonia Collins, my chief counsel, remarked as she studied the financial trap I'd set. Mrs. Montgomery's legal team is focusing all their energy there, completely missing the actual evidence trail. Penelope Harris is thorough but predictable, I replied, remembering the reputation of Jasmine's attorney. She's looking for hidden assets, not fabricated ones. Fabian entered with a tablet displaying a new surveillance photo. Jasmine exiting Penelope Harris's office at 3 a.m, her expression haggard despite her perfect makeup. They're working around the clock, he noted. The Harris team is convinced you're hiding assets offshore to minimize the divorce settlement. I couldn't help but smile at the irony. The offshore accounts they were investigating had been created specifically to be found. A convincing distraction containing modest sums that appeared suspicious without actually violating any laws. What about Judge Conway? I asked, turning to Sonia. He's reviewed the preliminary files we submitted, she confirmed. The foundation audit caught his particular attention. Before taking the bench, Conway spent 15 years prosecuting charity fraud cases. Another piece falling perfectly into place. I hadn't known about Conway's background when creating my plan, but such fortuitous developments had occurred throughout this process, as if fate itself approved of my course. Our witnesses are prepared? I confirmed. All 7 of them, Sonia nodded. Including the unexpected one. That had been Fabian's suggestion, approaching Millie Wesson, Justin's previous conquest. Initially reluctant, she'd become eager to testify after learning about his relationship with Jasmine. Alex Chong cleared his throat. The Securities Commission has completed their review of all transactions. Everything is in order, despite the appearance of impropriety you've cultivated. And the real financial position? I asked, though I knew the answer. Strong. Remarkably strong, given market conditions. Alex shook his head with grudging admiration. The contrast between perception and reality will be dramatic when revealed. Our planning session was interrupted by my assistant. Sir, Mrs. Montgomery has arrived with Penelope Harris and her associate, Daniel Chapman. They're demanding to see you immediately. I exchanged glances with my team. This confrontation wasn't unexpected, but its timing was interesting. Show them in, I directed, nodding for my team to remain. Whatever was about to unfold, I wanted witnesses. Jasmine entered first, her designer suit and perfect hair a stark contrast to the desperation in her eyes. Penelope Harris followed, tall, imposing, with the predatory confidence that had earned her the nickname the Guillotine in divorce court circles. Chapman, her assistant, carried an expandable file folder bulging with documents. Mr. Montgomery, Harris began without preamble, we're here to serve you with divorce papers and a request for an emergency hearing regarding financial disclosures. She placed the documents on my desk with theatrical precision. My client has compelling evidence of financial impropriety and hidden assets, she continued, her voice carrying the practiced outrage that had intimidated countless wealthy husbands. The court will be particularly interested in your recent market manipulations and undisclosed offshore holdings. I accepted the papers calmly, not bothering to open them. Is that all, Ms. Harris? My lack of reaction clearly unsettled her. We're also prepared to inform the Securities Commission about your financial behavior during this period of artificial market depression. Artificial. I repeated, glancing at Alex Chong, who struggled to maintain his professional demeanor. Yes, artificial, Harris asserted, growing more confident. You've deliberately undermined your company's value to minimize marital assets prior to divorce proceedings. It's transparent and illegal. I leaned back in my chair, studying the three people before me, Jasmine's desperation, Harris's misplaced confidence, Chapman's nervous anticipation. Ms. Harris, I appreciate your zealous representation of your client, I said evenly. However, I should inform you that all my actions regarding Montgomery Enterprises have been fully documented, completely legal and coordinated with the appropriate regulatory bodies. I nodded toward Alex, who produced his credentials. Alex Chong, Senior Investigator, Securities Commission. I can confirm that Mr. Montgomery's company has operated within all legal parameters throughout this period. The blood drained from Jasmine's face as she realized the depth of her miscalculation. After they departed, visibly shaken but stubbornly maintaining their litigious stance, I sent an encrypted message to my entire team. Trap set. Proceeding to final phase. Fabian called moments later. Justin is trying to flee. He's booked a ticket to the Cayman Islands departing tomorrow morning. Ensure he doesn't leave the city, I instructed. The investigation needs his testimony. Already handled, Fabian assured me. His passport has been flagged in connection with the Foundation investigation, and his Vegas creditors have been discreetly informed of his travel plans. I stood at my window watching Jasmine's car speed away from the building. For months she believed herself the hunter, unaware she was actually the prey. Every move she'd made had been anticipated, every desperate countermeasure accounted for in my strategy. 1 month, I murmured to myself, recalling my promise to the board. In 30 days, this elaborate chess match would reach its conclusion, and Jasmine would finally understand what it meant to challenge a man who had built his life by seeing 3 moves ahead. I faced the board of directors again, this time with a different energy permeating the room. Gilbert's usual confident posture had diminished, his shoulders slightly hunched as he delivered the update. This is a historic decline, he said, unable to meet my gaze directly. We've lost nearly 40% of our market value in just a few months. Shareholders are demanding answers I don't have. I surveyed the faces around the table, concern, fear, and in some cases, thinly veiled anger. Only now, after months of preparation, could I finally reveal the truth. What I'm about to share cannot leave this room, I began, activating the electronic security measures that would prevent any recording or transmission. The company is fine. In fact, we're stronger than ever. Confused murmurs rippled through the room. The apparent decline in our value has been a controlled operation, coordinated with regulators and key investors. I distributed folders containing the true financial reports. Every public filing has remained factually accurate while creating a specific perception. Elena Vasquez flipped through the documents, her eyes widening. These projections, they're 30% above our last quarter. Correct, I confirmed. The Silverstone merger is proceeding flawlessly. We've secured the Asian distribution channels, and the R&D pipeline is exceeding expectations. Then why? Gilbert began. Because I discovered a systematic attempt to undermine the company from within, I interrupted. Someone with intimate knowledge of our operations has been working to damage Montgomery Enterprises while simultaneously attempting to extract maximum value through legal means. I didn't need to name Jasmine explicitly. The implication was clear to everyone present. The Foundation audit was the first piece of evidence, I continued. But as we investigated further, we found connections that suggested a more elaborate scheme. This wasn't entirely accurate, but it served my purpose, creating a narrative that explained my actions while protecting the company's reputation. After the meeting concluded, with the board now fully briefed and reassured, I retreated to my office. Alone at last, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and removed a small album of photographs, images from the early days of my marriage to Jasmine. There we were on our honeymoon, her smile radiant as she held up a glass of champagne against the backdrop of the French countryside. Another showed us at the groundbreaking of the first Montgomery Children's Wing at St. Clair's Hospital, both wielding ceremonial shovels. Had she been planning her exit even then? Or had something changed along the way? These questions haunted me more than I cared to admit. My phone buzzed with a message from Fabian, audio file attached. Conversation between Redcliffe and Wesson. Relevant to your interest. I played the recording, Justin's voice tense and strained. Everything's falling apart. The accounts are frozen, my passport's flagged, and those guys from Vegas are calling hourly. You should have known better than to cross Vernon Montgomery, Millie replied, satisfaction evident in her tone. He's always 3 steps ahead. Jasmine said he was too absorbed in his business to notice, Justin complained. She had it all planned out, the divorce filing, the settlement, everything. Clearly not everything, Millie countered. There's something else, Justin said, his voice lowering. Something Jasmine hasn't told anyone. A backup plan she thinks will force Vernon's hand. The recording ended there, leaving me with a new variable to consider. What additional leverage did Jasmine believe she possessed? I made a note to have Fabian intensify surveillance. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Sonia Collins entered with a thick folder. The complete evidence package, she announced, placing it on my desk. Including something unexpected. Testimony from the Foundation's former accountant. He claims Jasmine pressured him to falsify records until he resigned 6 months ago. I nodded, adding this new information to my mental strategy board. And the hearing? Scheduled for next Monday. Judge Conway will preside. Sonia hesitated. There's something else. You've been receiving anonymous death threats. This was unexpected. From whom? We're investigating, but they appear to originate from burner phones purchased with cash. She handed me a printout of the messages. Security has been doubled at all your properties. After Sonia left, I was reviewing the new information when my private elevator chimed. Only a handful of people had access, and at this hour, I knew exactly who it would be. Jasmine stepped out, her composure fractured despite her immaculate appearance. You need to stop this, she demanded without preamble. Call off the audit. Drop the investigation. Why would I do that? I asked calmly, closing the folder of evidence. Because this vendetta is destroying everything, the company, the Foundation, our lives. I studied her with detached curiosity. Interesting choice of words. Vendetta implies I'm seeking unjustified revenge, rather than simply uncovering the truth. The truth? She laughed bitterly. You wouldn't recognize truth if it slapped you in the face. You're so wrapped up in your games and strategies. Games? I stood slowly. Is that what you call embezzling from children's hospitals? Planning to steal half my life's work while sleeping with your trainer? You're insane, she whispered. No, merely thorough. I walked to the window, gazing out at the city lights. Every stock drop was controlled and coordinated with regulators. The company has remained fundamentally sound throughout this crisis you and your attorney tried to exploit. Her face paled as understanding dawned. You orchestrated all of this? The financial problems, the Silverstone complications, all of it was fake. Not fake, I corrected. Strategic. Like a chess player sacrificing a pawn to capture the queen. You're a monster, she breathed. No, my dear. I'm simply a few moves ahead. As security escorted her from the building, I wondered if there had ever been a genuine moment between us, or if our entire marriage had been a carefully constructed lie, hers and mine. Camera flashes popped like lightning against a stormy morning as I ascended the courthouse steps. Reporters shouted questions, their voices blending into a meaningless cacophony. I maintained my composed expression, neither grim nor triumphant, as Fabian and Sonia flanked me through the media gauntlet. Mr. Montgomery, is it true the foundation's funds were embezzled? Vernon, will Montgomery Enterprises recover from this crisis? Did your wife really plan to steal half your fortune? I offered no comments, letting the speculation swirl around me like autumn leaves in a gust. Inside, the courtroom was already filling with spectators, financial reporters, curious attorneys, and even a few competitors eager to witness my potential downfall. Jasmine sat at the plaintiff's table with Penelope Harris and her team. Her black designer suit and pearl necklace projected an image of dignified wronged wife, though the effect was undermined by the hollowness in her eyes. I noticed Justin was nowhere to be seen. Nara just arrived, Mike whispered, nodding toward the back where my loyal housekeeper sat nervously clutching her purse. She's prepared to testify about the items Mrs. Montgomery asked her to pack and the conversation she overheard. Good. And the market. Shares jumped 23% after yesterday's press release clarifying the company's actual financial position. We're almost back to pre-crisis levels. Before I could respond, the courtroom doors opened dramatically. Millie Wesson entered, drawing all eyes with her deliberate entrance and the thick folder she carried. Behind her, I spotted two burly men I recognized as representatives of Justin's Vegas creditors, their expressions suggesting they were attending strictly for business purposes. All rise, the bailiff announced as Judge Conway entered, a stern man with a reputation for zero tolerance toward financial impropriety. Perfect. Before we begin, Conway stated after preliminary introductions, I want to clarify that this hearing encompasses both the divorce petition and the financial disclosures requested by both parties. Given the complexity of the assets involved and the ongoing investigation into the Montgomery Foundation, I expect complete transparency from everyone present. Penelope Harris rose first, her confidence seemingly undiminished despite the setbacks of recent days. Your Honor, our investigation has uncovered compelling evidence of financial manipulation and hidden assets, she began, launching into a well-rehearsed argument about my alleged attempts to devalue Montgomery Enterprises before the divorce proceedings. I listened patiently, making occasional notes while she painted me as a calculating financial manipulator who had orchestrated a temporary market depression to cheat my wife of her fair share. When she finished, I surprised everyone by asking to respond personally rather than through my legal team. Your Honor, with all due respect to Ms. Harris's creative interpretation of events, I'd like to present the actual facts. Conway nodded and I approached the bench with a folder of my own. For the past year, my wife and Justin Redcliffe have been planning to file for divorce and claim half my assets, I stated calmly. During this time, Mrs. Montgomery diverted over $2 million from the Montgomery Foundation, money intended for children's hospitals, to fund their escape plan. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Jasmine's face flushed with anger or embarrassment, perhaps both. These are the bank statements, I continued, displaying the documents on the courtroom's projection system. Note Mrs. Montgomery's signature on each transfer authorization. And these are records of the Seattle property purchased under an alias but traced to accounts she controls. The evidence unfolded methodically, surveillance records, financial transfers, recorded conversations, and testimony from Foundation employees who had been pressured to falsify records. Your Honor, I concluded, every action I took regarding Montgomery Enterprises was fully documented, completely legal and coordinated with the Securities Commission, represented here by Investigator Chong. There was never any attempt to devalue assets, merely a strategic operation to expose a criminal conspiracy. As if on cue, the courtroom doors opened again. Two officers entered with Justin between them, looking disheveled and terrified. The prosecution's key witness has agreed to testify in exchange for consideration regarding his own charges, announced the district attorney who had entered behind them. Jasmine half rose from her seat. Justin, don't you dare. Silence, Judge Conway ordered. Justin avoided Jasmine's gaze as he was sworn in. His testimony was devastating, detailing how Jasmine had approached him initially with the plan, convinced that I would be too distracted by company troubles to notice their scheme. She said it was foolproof, Justin admitted, his voice barely audible. She had inside information about company operations from someone on the board. This unexpected revelation caused another stir. I glanced at my board members present in the gallery, noting which one suddenly looked ill. As the evidence mounted, Jasmine's composure finally cracked. "You planned all of this," she screamed at me, rising from her seat. "You're a monster, Vernon." "Mrs. Montgomery, control yourself or you'll be held in contempt," Conway warned. I remained calm, presenting the final piece of evidence. Documentation proving that all my actions regarding Montgomery Enterprises had been legal, transparent to regulators, and designed specifically to expose the embezzlement and planned theft of company assets. Judge Conway's ruling was swift and unequivocal. He dismissed the divorce petition and ordered the case transferred to criminal investigation. "Based on the evidence presented, there are serious questions of criminal misconduct that must be addressed," he declared, nodding to the officers waiting at the back of the courtroom. Jasmine's face went blank with shock as she was placed in handcuffs alongside Justin and the board member who had been feeding her information. As they were led past me, Jasmine paused, her eyes meeting mine one final time. "I gave you 8 years of my life," she whispered. "No," I corrected softly. "You spent 8 years planning to steal everything I built." In chess, I thought but didn't say. Jasmine had played as queen, but forgot the king remained on the board.